So now we're going to talk about converting decimals to percent. We've already talked about this a little bit. Now I'm going to kind of explain to you the reasoning, why and how we convert the decimals to percent and percents to decimals. Make sure you write down the examples on your note sheet or in your journals, and I'll give you some problems to practice, and we will practice again in class tomorrow. So first of all, changing from a decimal to a percent. Go ahead and write this down. Changing from a decimal to a percent, really what we're doing is we are multiplying the decimal by 100. We're multiplying by 100. And that's why we simply move the decimal point 2 times forward or to the right, however you want to think of that. So I'm going to write that down. Move the decimal point 2 times. It's always 2 times because we're always either multiplying or dividing by 100. I'll tell you about that in a minute. 2 times to the right. You could also use the word forward if that makes more sense to you. So we're moving the decimal point 2 times forward. So what does that mean? Take a look at this example here. 0.66, I'm going to move the decimal 2 times, and as a percent, that's 66%. 0.22, I'm just going to move the decimal 2 times, and that's 22%. If I have something like this, 0.04, again, I'm going to move the decimal 2 times to the right or forward, and that would give me 4%. Okay? Take a look at this one. If I move the decimal, if this is 0.007 or this is 7 thousandths as a decimal, if I want to convert it to a percent, I move the decimal 2 times, and I'm still going to have a decimal number, 0.7. See, the decimal ended up there? But if I add the percent sign, that's not a decimal number anymore, that's a percent. The decimal was 7 thousandths, so that means it's 7/10 of a percent. Sometimes you still get a really small percent. In some examples, look at this one. Where is the decimal in 1? Remember, if it's a whole number, if you don't see the decimal point, it's there. It's just at the end of the number. Let's take a look. In 1, the decimal would be here. So if I move it 2 times, 1, 2, what am I going to do to write the percent? I'm going to add 2 zeros. So that means 1 as a decimal, or if you want to look at it as 1.0, that is 100%. So if you have a whole number as your decimal, technically that's going to be more than 100%. Here's another one. 2.3. If I move the decimal 2 times, I'm going to add a 0, and that would be 230%. Now, I know I didn't do all of them. You can certainly pause the video and try some of those on your own. But now I want to talk about the other way around. How do you then convert a percent back to a decimal? You reverse the process. When changing a decimal to a percent, we're really multiplying by 100. So to change a percent back to a decimal, you probably guessed it, we're dividing by 100. Let's write that down. So you're really dividing by 100, which means the reverse is true. Instead of moving the decimal 2 times to the right, we're going to move the decimal 2 times to the left. Or some people like to think of it as backwards. Move the decimal backwards. And remember, just because you don't see a decimal point doesn't mean it's not there. It's always at the end of the number. And remember, the nice thing about these videos is if I'm talking too fast or you're trying to write down those notes, just pause the video. Pause the video. You can make me go as fast or as slow as you want. All right, let's take a look at some examples here. So if I want to change 87% back to a decimal, I'm going to move the decimal point 2 times to the left. You may be thinking, Ms. Hill, I don't see it. Where's the decimal? Remember what I just said. If you don't see it, it's at the end of the number. So if I move it back 2 times, that 87% as a decimal is 0.87. There's the decimal in 65.8. If I move it back 2 times, that is going to be 0.658. Let's look at an example like this, just a single digit percent. Remember the decimals here, so if we move it back 2 times, 1, 2, that's going to give us 0.09. Okay, so converting from a percent to a decimal, we're just moving the decimal point back 2 times. If you see it, that's easy. If you don't see it, it's just at the end of the number. Well, let's look at 2 more kind of tricky ones. Copy these down. 521%. Remember what I just said up here. If you have a whole number, and that's going to be more than 100%. So here we have a percent that's more than 100. So the reverse is also going to be true. This is going to have some whole numbers. It's not going to be 0 point something, like all these have been so far. So I'm going to move the decimal 1, 2, and this number is actually 5.21. 521% is 5 wholes and 21 hundredths. Let's do one up here. I move 5% back 1, 2. That's going to be 0.05 as a decimal. I want to do one more with you. 0.33%. This is a really teeny tiny percent. You can have decimals in your percent. If it has a percent sign, it's a percent, not a decimal. So if I move this decimal point back, watch this slowly. 1, 2. What is that number going to look like? It's going to be 0.0033. This is a really small number. 0.33% is, if we read our decimal correctly, 33 ten-thousandths. Really small number. Let me give you a couple for you to practice. I want you to practice converting from a decimal to a percent and a percent to a decimal using the process I just showed you. And again, you can go back and write down your notes, pause the video if you need to. I'd like you to convert 2A and 2B from percents to decimals. And for 3A, 3B, and 3C, these are decimals. Convert them to a percent. Pause the video, try them, and unpause when you're finished. Okay, let's check your work. Hopefully you found these pretty simple if you followed the steps. 126% is 1.26. Move the decimal backward. 0.9%, 1, 2, is going to be 0.009. Now converting these decimals to percent, you move forward. Move the decimal 2 times to the right. So 0.01 is 1%. 3.91 is 391%. 0.002 or 2 thousandths will give me 0.2%. Remember, you can have percents that are smaller than 1 and bigger than 100. As long as you understand the process, you're in good shape. Bring all these notes to class tomorrow and we'll practice converting percents and decimals some more.